Let's talk about the uncomfortable stuff, sexual harm in relation to children. Hi, I'm Monica from Let's Talk Counselling, and welcome to the podcast where we talk about sexual harm in relation to children. We focus on what's real, what's true, what are the myths, and what we can do about it. I have lived experience of child sexual abuse, and I know that it's a tricky topic, but I also think it's really important that we talk about it. I'm also a psychologist who works with children and their families where this has happened. So what a lot of people aren't aware of is where sexual harm has occurred in families, a vast majority of it is caused by someone well known to the young child that has been harmed. It often in the media we think of someone that we don't know, like a stranger or that really weird bloke that's hanging around, the local park. But in reality, sexual harm is often conducted by someone that's well known to the child, and it's someone in a really trusted relationship. In Australia, we also had the Royal Commission into Institutional Sexual Offending. And even the Royal Commission itself acknowledged that only actually covered about 6% of offending against a child. The other large cohort, trusted adults within that family constellation, so sometimes it could be a father or a stepfather, an uncle or a grandfather. So about 90% of offending is done by somebody that the child knows and trusts. And there's only actually about 10% of offending that happens by someone that the child does not know. So like that stranger in the park. And so often when we think about offending, we've got to realise that we're talking about people that we know and that are in our families. We're not talking about strangers that are lurking in the bushes. And it's interesting because that often becomes such a barrier to seeking help. Because if I know this person, and I think they're a really lovely person and they're kind and great with kids, how can it be that this person could do something that's so horrendous to a young child? But often that's exactly the kind of people that we work with. And it's easier when it's someone that we don't know. It's easier to go to the police or to report someone when they're a stranger. But when it's someone that we do know, that we care about, it makes it so much harder to report. What I'm interested in is not necessarily the reporting, but the healing from the harm. Helping people talk about it openly and honestly, how we can talk about keeping children safe from harm, and how we can help people that have harmed to understand why and how, so that we can then move forward. And even the Royal Commission itself acknowledged that only actually covered about 6% of offending against a child. So it is an important cohort, but it's actually not the most important area that I think we need to be targeting. It's not just priests and pedophiles that we need to be helping and working with. It's people in our families. It's people in our streets. It's teachers, coaches. And it's also really important that we talk to children about keeping them safe. In one way, governments address this issue by teaching children protective behaviours. And that's not a bad approach to the issue, but it still means that the child has to be the one to keep themselves safe. And I tend to disagree with that. It is always up to adults. It is the adults in any child's life that have the responsibility to keep kids safe. It's fair enough to tell a child you can say no, but often it's really hard for that child to say no if it is also someone that they love and care for, or they might not feel heard, or they might not feel able to say no. It's actually up to the adults to have adult conversations about what all of us need to do, what all of us need to be aware of, in order to keep any child safe in our community, in our family, and in our local areas. And I understand that it's such an uncomfortable topic and that your gut reaction might be to want to lock them away and throw away the key. But in my experience, perpetrators really can be treated, and in fact they're really desperate to get treatment and want treatment. I've worked in this area for 20 years, and in fact there was an organisation that I worked with, and I think all up at the time that they had their funding, we worked with hundreds of guys, and the rates of reoffending were minimal. There was an incredibly small percentage of guys that had gone through treatment who actually found themselves offending again in the future. And when I say incredibly small, I'm talking about less than 5%. What I'm also happy to say is that there's plenty of research to support that. So when you can get down to the nitty-gritty and work out what actually is driving this behaviour in the first place, because no behaviour occurs in a vacuum, when you can work out what's going on for that person and why, and how we can help them to work through those underlying issues, can make all the difference. It's really interesting because a lot of guys that I work with are at a total loss to understand how they've done what they've done. They know that it's wrong and they know that it's terrible, and they are totally confused as to how could I do such a horrible thing. And so often what treatment is targeted at is looking at exactly that question, as well as a whole lot of other things. Treatment's not easy and it's not quick, and sometimes it can take a very long time. But I firmly believe that if someone is willing to look at those issues, and if they're really motivated to not harm another child in that way, that treatment will be successful. And there's good research to back that up. Another myth that we might want to address is also looking at those that do harm in this way. I've mentioned guys a lot because a lot of the work that I do is with adult males, but I have to acknowledge that women can also cause harm sexually against children. And recently we're sort of becoming more and more aware of that. It happens a lot, but it's more common in guys, if I'm honest, but it certainly does happen in women. And there's also a lot of people that are worried about their behaviours or worried about their thoughts, but haven't actually acted out on them. It's not unusual for a woman to come to me really worried about some of the thoughts that she's had, either about her children or other children. But again, when we unpack it and get to the bottom of it in treatment, it's not that they've necessarily offended, but they're really worried about their thinking around it and understanding where that comes from and why, and again, how we can put steps in place to keep children safe means that they're actually very unlikely to offend in the future. Some people reach out because they're worried about their thoughts. Other people do reach out because of what they've already done. And then there's others that actually aren't even aware that what they've done could be harmful. And so all of those people do need help. And if you're in a situation where something's happened in your family, often just being able to reach out, get help, talk to somebody about it in a non-judgmental way can make a huge difference. It's getting that understanding and support that I think is really vital. And it's actually one of the reasons why I'm a psychologist, because I know when stuff happened to me, nobody in my family ever spoke about it. I wasn't even aware of things happening to other family members, because when it comes to sexual abuse, it's a topic that's so taboo and a lot of people aren't equipped. So one of the things I want to cover in future episodes is actually helping people come up with language to talk about it and the confidence to talk about it. Because if we do, it can make a massive difference to not just you and your situation, but to other people around you. So thank you for your company today and for being willing to consider some of this uncomfortable stuff. Good on you for being here. And also remember, be kind, not only to yourself, but to others as well.